The empty wallet. Penelope Winters rummaged through her worn leather bag with increasing panic. The pristine white tablecloth of Lunette, Chicago's most exclusive restaurant, suddenly felt like a spotlight on her embarrassment. Her wallet, the faded blue one with paint stains on the corner, was sitting on her dresser at home. Not here where she desperately needed it. "Is everything all right, miss?" The server's voice, polite but tinged with suspicion, made her cheeks burn. "I seem to have forgotten my wallet," Penelope admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The man in the immaculate suit glanced around, clearly calculating how to handle the situation without creating a scene. The dinner, a rare splurge to celebrate selling one of her paintings after months of rejection, was turning into a nightmare. "I understand." The server nodded curtly. "If you'll follow me to the manager's office." Penelope rose on wobbly legs, her untouched creme brulee abandoned. The other diners didn't look up, but she felt their judgment all the same. This was exactly why people like her, artists living paycheck to paycheck in a converted warehouse, didn't belong in places like Lunette. "Wait." A deep voice cut through the tension. A man approached from a corner table, his presence commanding but not imposing. "I'll take care of the bill." The stranger wasn't what Penelope expected. No flashy watch or designer suit, just a simple button-down shirt with rolled sleeves and intelligent brown eyes that seemed to see right through her practiced composure. "That's very kind, but I couldn't possibly," Penelope began. "Marcus Calloway," he extended his hand. "I own this place." The server's demeanor changed instantly. "Of course, Mr. Calloway, I'll add the lady's bill to your account." Penelope's embarrassment doubled. "Mr. Calloway, I appreciate the gesture, but I don't accept charity." A smile played at the corner of his mouth. "Not charity. A trade." He nodded toward the sketchbook peeking from her bag. "You're an artist?" "A painter, yes." "Perfect. I've been looking for something new for my office wall." His eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. "A sketch in exchange for dinner seems fair." Something about his genuine interest made Penelope relax slightly. "You haven't seen my work. It might be terrible. I'll take my chances." Marcus gestured to the empty chair across from his table. "Join me for coffee while you work?" "Unless you need to rush off." Penelope hesitated. Every instinct told her to escape this embarrassment, but curiosity won out. She slid into the offered chair, pulling out her charcoals and sketchbook. "Any specific requests?" she asked, studying his face, the strong jawline and kind eyes that seemed both confident and somehow vulnerable. "Something that captures this moment," Marcus replied, pouring her a cup from the French press. "The beginning of an interesting story." As Penelope's charcoal moved across the paper, something shifted in the air between them. She captured not just his likeness, but something deeper, the quiet intelligence, the hint of loneliness behind his smile. Neither realized then that this sketch, born from embarrassment and chance, would become the first chapter of a story neither had imagined possible. In his office the next day, Marcus found himself staring at Penelope's sketch instead of reviewing reports. He'd been honest about one thing. He did need something for his wall. He just hadn't mentioned that the wall belonged to his office in the headquarters of Calloway Investments, where he managed a portfolio worth billions. Charcoal and chance 3 weeks after their unusual meeting, Penelope stood back from her canvas, brush still in hand, when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "The sketch is remarkable. I'd like to see more of your work. Is your studio open to visitors? Marcus Calloway." Penelope stared at her phone, paint-stained fingers hovering over the screen. She hadn't expected to hear from the restaurant owner again. The sketch had been payment, transaction complete. Yet something about his quiet confidence had lingered in her thoughts. "Studios open today, 4-6 p.m., 1728 Wicker Avenue, Unit 3B. The building looks condemned, but it's just artistic character," she replied, then immediately regretted the self-deprecating humor. At precisely 4 o'clock, a knock echoed through her converted warehouse space. Penelope wiped her hands on her already paint-splattered jeans before sliding open the heavy door. Marcus stood there, more casual than at the restaurant, in dark jeans and a simple gray sweater, holding a paper bag. "I brought coffee," he said, lifting the bag slightly, "and pastries from Bellflower Bakery." "You didn't need to," she started, then stopped herself. "Thank you." That was thoughtful. As Marcus moved through her studio, Penelope saw her space through his eyes. The exposed brick walls covered with canvases in various states of completion, the skylight casting natural light across her work table, the makeshift kitchen in the corner where her roommate Daphne had balanced a coffee maker precariously on art books. "Your work is extraordinary," he said, stopping before a large canvas depicting an elderly couple on a park bench, their hands intertwined, the cityscape behind them a blur of color and motion. "You capture emotion in a way I rarely see." "That's the only part that matters," Penelope replied, pouring coffee into mismatched mugs. "Technical skill is just the vehicle. It's worthless if you can't make someone feel something." Marcus nodded, studying a series of smaller pieces. "These would sell well in galleries." "If only they agreed with you," she laughed, the sound slightly bitter. "Most galleries want artists with established names or trust funds to sustain them through the emerging artist phase. You don't have either?" "My name is established among my mother's bridge club in Milwaukee, and my trust fund consists of whatever tips I save from my coffee shop shifts." Penelope handed him a chipped blue mug. Not exactly the pedigree the art world respects. For 3 hours they talked about art, philosophy, and their divergent paths. Marcus spoke of restaurants as community spaces but remained vague about his background. Penelope described growing up in Wisconsin, studying at the Art Institute of Chicago, and her struggle to break through. "I should go," Marcus said finally, reluctance evident in his voice. "Thank you for showing me your work. Would you consider doing a commissioned piece?" Before Penelope could answer, the studio door slid open and her roommate Daphne entered, arms full of groceries. She froze at the sight of Marcus. "Well, hello," Daphne said, eyebrows raised as she set down the bags. "Pen didn't mention we were having company." "Daphne, this is Marcus." "Marcus, my roommate and fellow starving artist." Daphne Rhodes. "Pleasure." Marcus smiled, extending his hand. Later, after Marcus had left with promises of connecting Penelope with potential buyers, Daphne cornered her in the kitchen. "That's the restaurant guy. The one whose place you couldn't afford?" Daphne whispered urgently. "Pen, I saw him get into a Bentley." "A Bentley? Restaurant owners don't drive cars like that unless they own a chain." "Maybe it's leased," Penelope shrugged, though uncertainty crept into her mind. "I Googled him while you were showing him the back studio. There's almost nothing online about a Marcus Calloway owning restaurants in Chicago." Daphne's expression grew serious. "Be careful, okay? Rich guys sometimes collect artists like accessories." Penelope nodded, but her thoughts drifted to the way Marcus had stood before her paintings, to how he'd asked questions that revealed genuine understanding of her process. For the first time in years, someone seemed to see her work, to see her clearly. That night she began a new painting, unconsciously capturing Marcus's thoughtful expression as he'd studied her canvases. The colors flowed differently, more confidently than they had in months. Whatever his secrets might be, Marcus Calloway had already changed something fundamental in her artistic vision. Hidden truths, the gallery was buzzing with Chicago's elite, champagne flutes catching the light as Penelope stood frozen before a wall of her own paintings. When Marcus had mentioned a small gathering of art enthusiasts, she hadn't expected the Crawford Gallery's prestigious autumn showcase. 6 of her pieces hung on the pristine white wall, already adorned with small red dots indicating sales. "You look shell-shocked." Marcus appeared at her side, offering a glass of water instead of champagne. He'd noticed her preference over their last few meetings. "I am," Penelope admitted, smoothing the vintage dress she'd panic-bought yesterday. "How did you manage this?" "Crawford Gallery has a 3-year waiting list even for established artists." Before Marcus could answer, a tall man with silver-streaked hair approached them, his attention focused entirely on Penelope. "Ms. Winters, your work is extraordinary. The emotional depth in remembered light is unlike anything I've seen from a contemporary painter." He extended his hand. "Thomas Crawford, this is my gallery, and I'm honored to display your work." Penelope shook his hand, momentarily speechless. "Thank you, Mr. Crawford, that means more than I can express. Call me Thomas, and the honor is mine." When Julian mentioned a promising artist, he gestured toward Marcus, who suddenly stiffened. "I was intrigued, but skeptical." "I shouldn't have been." Penelope turned slowly toward Marcus. "Julian?" Thomas's eyebrows rose. "Julian Calloway? Head of Calloway Investments?" His gaze darted between them. "I assumed you knew each other." "Excuse us for a moment, Marcus," or Julian said quietly, guiding Penelope toward a quieter corner of the gallery. Your name isn't Marcus? Penelope asked, her voice carefully controlled despite the storm brewing inside her. It is. Marcus Julian Calloway. I use my middle name in business settings. His expression was earnest. I didn't lie about that. Just about owning a restaurant? And apparently everything else? The betrayal felt physical, a tightness in her chest. You're not a restaurant owner. You're Julian Calloway, the billionaire investor. I do own Lunette, and several other restaurants. They're passion projects. He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. Penelope, I didn't want my name to change how you saw me. How I saw you. A bitter laugh escaped her. You mean you didn't want me to see you at all? Not really. The pieces fell into place. His vague answers about work, the expensive but understated clothes, his extensive knowledge of the art world. Did you ever plan to tell me? Or was I just an interesting project for you? The struggling artist you could rescue? That's not fair, Marcus said, his voice low. I've never pretended to be interested in your art. That's been genuine from the first sketch. But everything else has been a lie by omission. Penelope felt the curious glances of nearby patrons. This gallery showing, did Thomas Crawford actually want my work, or did he just owe the great Julian Calloway a favor? Your talent earned this, Marcus insisted. I only made the introduction. A waiter appeared with a tray of champagne and Penelope grabbed a glass, needing something to hold. You know what the worst part is? I trusted you. I showed you parts of my life I'm usually ashamed of. My shabby studio, my struggle to pay bills. I thought we were connecting despite our different worlds. But you were just slumming it. Penelope, please. Congratulations. Mr. Calloway, you've launched another successful venture. She raised her glass in a mock toast. A charity project with unexpected returns. She turned and walked away, stopping to thank Thomas Crawford for the opportunity before slipping out the gallery's side exit. The cool autumn air hit her face as tears threatened. Her phone buzzed with messages from Daphne, asking how the showing was going. How could she explain that her biggest professional triumph felt hollow? Back in her studio that night, Penelope stared at her newest painting, an unfinished portrait of Marcus that captured the quiet intensity she'd found so compelling. Now she wondered if that too had been a performance. 3 missed calls from him lit up her phone. She silenced it and turned back to the canvas, picking up her brush. With swift, angry strokes, she began transforming the intimate portrait into something else entirely. A study in deception, the subject's face partially obscured by shadow, revealing and concealing at once. When Daphne returned from her late shift, she found Penelope still painting, the portrait now unrecognizable. What happened? Daphne asked softly. Marcus Calloway happened, Penelope replied, not looking up from her canvas. Or should I say Julian Calloway, billionaire extraordinaire. Understanding dawned on Daphne's face. Oh, Pen. The good news is, Penelope said, her brush finally stilling, I sold 6 paintings tonight. The bad news is I have no idea if anyone actually wanted them, or if they were just buying a billionaire's latest discovery. Canvas of misunderstandings. For a week, Penelope ignored Marcus's calls and messages. The success of her gallery showing brought a flurry of interest from collectors and critics, but each compliment felt tainted. Had her art genuinely moved them, or were they simply following Julian Calloway's lead? On a gray Tuesday morning, as rain pelted against the studio's skylight, a knock echoed through the space. Penelope set down her paintbrush and opened the door to find Marcus standing there, soaked despite his umbrella. 5 minutes, he said, water dripping from his coat. That's all I'm asking. Penelope hesitated before stepping aside. 5 minutes. Marcus stood awkwardly in the center of her studio, looking out of place in a way he never had before. I should have told you everything from the beginning. You're right about that. Why didn't you? The question had haunted her for days. Because the moment people learn who I am, everything changes. His shoulders slumped slightly. Artists want patronage. Restaurateurs want investment. Everyone wants something from Julian Calloway. So you lied to avoid inconvenience? No, Marcus shook his head. I lied because for the first time in years someone was seeing me, not my bank account. He gestured toward the sketch she'd drawn that first night. That drawing, you captured something no one else has. The person behind the portfolio. Penelope crossed her arms. That doesn't justify the deception. You're right. It doesn't. He ran a hand through his damp hair. I grew up with nothing, Penelope. My mother worked 3 jobs. I slept on a pull-out couch until I was 17. When I made my first million at 26, I thought everything would change. And it did, but not how I expected. Penelope remained silent, watching him. Suddenly, I wasn't Marcus anymore. I was Julian Calloway, financial wunderkind. My opinions were brilliant, my jokes hilarious, my taste impeccable, regardless of what I actually said or did. Bitterness edged his voice. When we met, when you didn't know who I was, I felt real again. Before Penelope could respond, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen. I need to take this. It's the Westwood Gallery. Marcus nodded and moved toward the door. Your 5 minutes are up anyway. As he reached for the handle, Penelope called after him. Was the showing at Crawford really about my work? Or was it about you? Call Thomas Crawford yourself. Ask him why he chose your paintings. Marcus looked back at her, his expression unguarded. I only made an introduction. The rest was all you. After he left, Penelope took the call from Westwood Gallery. They were offering her a solo exhibition. No mention of Calloway Investments or Julian Calloway. Just interest in her work, specifically the transformed portrait she'd finished after the Crawford showing. That evening, against her better judgment, Penelope called Thomas Crawford. Marcus showed me your portfolio. Yes, Crawford confirmed, but I've been in this business 30 years. Ms. Winters, I don't display artists as favors, not even for investors like Julian Calloway. Then why? Because your work speaks to the human condition in a way that's both classic and utterly contemporary. The vulnerability and strength you capture, that's rare. Crawford paused. Did you think otherwise? Penelope's throat tightened. I wasn't sure. Artists should doubt their success less and their talent more, Crawford said kindly. It's the only way to keep growing. After hanging up, Penelope stood before her easel, contemplating the half-finished canvas. A scene of two people reaching toward each other across an impossible divide. She'd started it 3 days ago, unable to paint anything else. A masterpiece together. The Westwood Gallery was packed for Penelope's solo exhibition opening. Critics from Art News and the Chicago Tribune mingled with collectors and fellow artists. At the center of the main wall hung the transformed portrait, now titled Veiled Truth, that had captured the gallery director's attention. Your work is extraordinary, a familiar voice said behind. Her Penelope turned to find Marcus standing there, respectful distance between them. He wore no tie, his collar open, more the restaurant owner than the billionaire investor. Thank you for coming, she said softly. I wouldn't have missed it. His eyes moved to Veiled Truth, recognition flickering across his face. That was supposed to be me, wasn't it? It still is, in a way. Penelope studied her own work. It's about what we show and what we hide, about truth and perception. Around them, the crowd ebbed and flowed, but they remained in their own quiet space. 2 months had passed since their confrontation in her studio. 2 months of professional success for Penelope. Her work now sought after not for connection to Julian Calloway, but for its own merit. I've missed you, Marcus admitted. Our conversations, your perspective. I've missed you too. The confession surprised her with its ease. I was angry for a long time. You had every right to be. Yes, but I also realized something. Penelope turned fully toward him. I was afraid your money would overshadow my talent, that I'd always wonder if doors opened because of my work or your influence. Marcus nodded, understanding in his eyes. But then I realized I was giving your wealth more power than my art. A smile touched her lips. And that's not a trade I'm willing to make. Nor should you, Marcus agreed. Your talent is undeniable, to everyone here tonight. The gallery director approached, introducing a collector interested in commissioning a piece. As Penelope spoke with them, Marcus slipped away, giving her space. She found him later by the windows overlooking the city lights. There's something I never asked you, Penelope said, joining him. Why did you really cover my bill that night at Lunette? The truth, Marcus considered the question. I saw you sketching earlier before your meal even arrived. There was something in how you observed everything, not just looking, but truly seeing. His expression softened. When the situation with your wallet happened, it seemed like fate. A chance to connect with someone who might see the world as I wished I could. And now? Penelope asked. What do you see when you look at me now? An extraordinary artist. A woman of principle and talent, he hesitated. Someone I'd like to know better. Properly this time. No omissions. Marcus Julian Calloway, Penelope said, testing the full name. Billionaire investor, restaurant owner, and art enthusiast. That's me, he smiled, a vulnerability in his eyes. All cards on the table. Penelope Winters, she replied. Artist, occasional waitress, terrible with finances, but improving. She offered her hand. Pleased to meet you again. As they shook hands, something shifted between them, not erasing the past, but creating space for a new beginning. Later that night, as the exhibition wound down, they walked through the Chicago streets talking about art, authenticity, and second chances. 6 months later, in Marcus's office at Calloway Investments, her original sketch still hung on the wall, now joined by a small painting of two hands almost touching. Under it, a small placard read, "The Beginning, P. Winters." On the opposite wall hung a larger piece, two figures facing each other in full light, no shadows between them. Its title, Full Disclosure. In Penelope's new studio, bright, spacious, but still in her beloved artist district, a collection of her most experimental work took shape. Success had come, but on her terms, and when Marcus visited, he came not as a patron or investor, but as the man who had first seen her talent across a restaurant table, and who now saw all of her, just as she saw all of him. Their love story, built on a foundation of truth hard won, proved to be the masterpiece neither could have created alone.